Honey, come on over here, sugar buns. This machine just called me an asshole.
You know, Stephen King is perhaps the most prolific author of fiction in our lifetime. Seriously, the guy's written like over 60 novels to date, and he's only 75. Now, naturally, he's made for a great source of material for filmmakers ever since the movie version of Carrie came out in 1976. Unfortunately, most of these film adaptations have lost a lot in translation. Some due to being in the hands of subpar filmmakers, but mostly due to the problematic nature of distilling huge novels down to 2-hour movies or 2-part television miniseries. In this video, we're going to talk about the Stephen King film adaptations that mostly hit the mark and translated well to the big screen. The scary ones. So don't get your hopes up for Stand By Me and Shawshank. Those are great, but those are Bachman and not scary. You'll notice that each of these films on this list are directed by filmmakers who are every bit as renowned as King himself. So here it is. The top 5 Stephen King movie adaptations. Number 5, Christine.
Her name's Christine.
I like that.
Now we can all sort of relate to Arnie in this story. Obsessing over a car is what we all do at the ripe old age of 16. It didn't matter if it was a Pinto, a Mustang, or in this case, a bright red Plymouth Fury.
No, I don't care about that. I just want to ask you about your car.
Now put simply, this is a frightening tale about a killer car. Now there are some distinct differences between the book and the movie, such as why the car is evil in the first place. But that's not really a concern here. In fact, the film version's explanation is probably better. It was evil right off the assembly line. Now, once our doomed protagonist gets the car, he goes from zero to hero overnight. But the only problem is Christine wants him all to herself and kills anyone who threatens their relationship. Now that's some creepy shit. John Carpenter says this film was pretty much just a directing gig, but he has so much style that it's impossible to not infuse it in this flick. This film is dripping with 80s residue, from the sets all the way to the cast. And apparently this crazy tale was inspired by a true story. The real-life car was dubbed Golden Eagle, and it wreaked its havoc in Maine. And if you don't believe me, just look it up.
I knew a guy had a car like that once. Fucking bastard killed himself in it.
Number 4, Misery.
I'm your number 1 fan. There's nothing to worry about.
You're gonna be just fine. I'll take good care of you.
I'm your number 1 fan.
Misery deals with every famous person's nightmare. Being held captive by a super obsessive mega fan who wants them all to themselves and will straight up murder anyone who gets in their way. Novelist Paul Sheldon, played by the late James Caan, is rescued from a serious car crash by his number 1 fan, Annie. That's great news, right? No, it's not. Annie is a total psychopath and has no plans of letting him go home.
I don't want her dead! I want her! And you murdered her!
In fact, her only plans involve torturing the poor dude until he writes what she wants. There's a great sense of dread as Paul realizes what's happening to him, and despite most of his attempts, he just can't outsmart his greatest fan. One notable change between the book and the movie just so happens to be the most famous scene of the movie. You know the scene. Annie takes a sledgehammer to Paul's ankles.
Shh, darling. Trust me.
God's sake.
It's for the best.
Annie, please!
Kathy Bates seems born to play this role, and it's difficult to imagine anyone else as Annie. And apparently, many actors were offered the role of Paul Sheldon, but none of them seemed interested in lying in bed for a whole movie. I don't know why. That seems like a pretty sweet gig to me.
Yes, I told you I was your #1 fan.
Number 3, The Shining.
Stay away from me! Wendy, stay away! Darling, light of my life. I'm not gonna hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in.
Now ask anyone and they'll tell you that The Shining is one of the best films of all time. Anyone except the man who wrote the book, Stephen King.
The images are striking, but to me that's surface, it's not substance. So I used to describe The Shining, the film, as something like a beautiful car that had no engine in it.
Stanley Kubrick made this story his own, as any great director would. But it's not difficult to see why King was so disappointed in the end result. After all, the book's protagonist, Jack, his story arc is a tragic fall from a flawed but loving husband and father to axe-wielding maniac. But in the film, he seems pretty cuckoo from the get-go. I mean, after all, he is played by Jack Nicholson.
Whenever you come in here and interrupt me, you're breaking my concentration. You're distracting me, and it will then take me time to get back to where I was.
The film is set at the fictional Overlook Hotel, and it's a great setting indeed. Very unsettling and cold. Suffering from writer's block and dealing with alcoholism, Jack takes a job as caretaker at the Overlook and brings his wife and son, Danny, along for this twisted ride. King's story is about the hotel being a dark and evil force, possibly even hell, and how it tragically destroys a family while in pursuit of Danny, who happens to be telepathic.
Come and play with us, Daddy.
Kubrick's story seems to favor more of the psychological element as the explanation for the horrific visions and events inside the hotel. Nevertheless, both the book and the film are fantastic in their own right, and despite their many differences, The Shining is a top-notch adaptation.
Here's Johnny!
Here we are at number 2, and one of my personal favorite ones on this list, The Dead Zone. The Dead Zone is so good, we actually debated putting it even higher on the list. Christopher Walken slays in this film. He plays Johnny, a school teacher who gets into an accident while driving home one dark and stormy night from his girlfriend's house. And 5 years later, he awakens from a coma and discovers he has psychic abilities through human touch. He can see aspects of someone's past, present, and future.
Amy is my daughter's name.
Your daughter's screaming. The house is burning. Your daughter's in the house. It's not too late.
The film might be the most faithful to the book of all of Stephen King's adaptations. But one major difference is in the reference to the dead zone itself. In the book, it refers to a blank spot that he has in his visions that is due to part of his brain suffering permanent damage from the crash. But in the movie, they don't even mention the permanent damage to his brain. Only that the dead zone blank spot suggests that events he sees in the future could possibly be changed.
In the vision, there was something missing. It was something I couldn't see.
How do you mean?
I don't know. It was like a blank spot, dead zone.
You're definitely going to enjoy politician Greg Stilson, played by Martin Sheen, as his character is cartoonishly irredeemable. Now, the events that happen to Johnny in this film are tragic, but David Cronenberg never lets the film feel dreadful or overtly sad. And a fun thing about this film is it answers the metaphorical question, if you could go back in time to kill Hitler, Would you? Number 1, It, Chapter 1. Now, It Chapter 1, it...
Set
What?
behind you.
Come on, guys. What are you doing?
What is this?
All right. Okay. So only Chapter 1. Since this is always the best part of this ridiculously thick novel. It is a supernatural entity that awakens every 27 years to feast on the children of Derry, Maine. It has a few manifestations, but the scariest and most iconic one is that of Pennywise, the dancing clown. The mystery and character development is so strong in the first half of the story that the ending could never live up to it. The visual effects are top-notch here, and Bill Skarsgård makes for a pretty creepy Pennywise. Not quite Tim Curry chill up your spine creepy, but still effective. The look and feel of this film is classic Stephen King, and the child cast is mostly great. And like I already mentioned, the visual effects are on point.
Time to float.
As you might expect from a mammoth novel that's north of 1,100 pages, the film version mixes some things up and cuts a lot out. Now, even if we have the book in, say, 550 pages, it's still a ton of material to squeeze into a movie that's just north of 2 hours long. You'll enjoy this one. Jesus, okay, Lord. You'll enjoy this one, but go ahead and watch both. But I can only vouch for Chapter 1.
I, Georgie, am Pennywise the Dancing Clown. You are Georgie. So now we know each other. Correct?
I guess so. I gotta go.
Go?
Well, there you have it. Our list of the top 5 Stephen King movie adaptations. Thanks for watching, and as always, let us know what your list looks like down in the comments.
Sometimes that is better.
Cujo!